How young is too young? Well, that's what I want to approach in this video. I've seen with my own two eyes many examples of relationships that have a large age gap that succeed, and I have seen a number that unfortunately have crashed and burned. And I'm going to go over in this video what I think the primary components of the winners and unfortunately the losers are, coming up in the video. Okay, so it's been no big secret that for decades and decades, many men have been traveling over to Southeast Asia. I happen to be in the Philippines, but there's a number of countries here, South America, all over the world really, where men of a certain age, 50, 60, 70, mostly approaching or at retirement age, have decided that their options for any kind of romance or connection with a female has hit its expiration date in their home country. They're no longer attracted to those women that they so-called qualify for. And in many cases, the women that they do qualify for aren't interested in them. So everybody's standards seems to be fairly high, as they should be. It's nothing worse than to settle. And many men, like myself, once I hit that age, said, you know what, I'm not going to settle. I'd rather be alone than with somebody I'm not happy with. And for many years, I lived alone. Then I made a move over here to the Philippines, and I was alone for 2 years. I dated sporadically here and there, but then I finally met who is now my wife. But that was 2 years of vacancy. Did I go on dates? Absolutely. Did I date women that were too young? Absolutely. Did that last? Absolutely not. I ended it right then and there. I thought to myself, you know, this is me. At the time I was 62 or 63 maybe, and I'm sitting with some beautiful little 20, 21-year-old woman that had been introduced to me or told that she was interested in me or whatever. And I thought, you know what I am? I'm a midlife crisis connected to the internet. My blood pressure monitor is connected to the computer to make sure that I don't stroke out. And her phone is connected to the latest K-pop video. It's like, there is nothing that this woman and I have in common. The only thing that I have is I'm attracted to her looks, and she's probably attracted to my financial stability. And that's not something to base a relationship on. So I'll take a pass. Thank you very much. Other people, unfortunately, that I've observed over here, didn't quite have that mindset. They weren't able to say no. Their emotions took over. Their lust took over. The woman's lust for the financial stability took over, and the two of them ended up trying to make a go of it. I have found that the successful relationships that I've seen endure over here have been those where if the man is 50, 60, 70, if the woman has already arrived or has surpassed the age of 30, your odds of success increase drastically, as opposed to meeting someone under the age of 30, and especially the age of 25. It's a scientific fact that in both men and women, the human brain is not fully developed until the age of 25. It's still trying to figure out how to navigate life. They're still trying to figure out what their goals are, what their aspirations are, what their beliefs are, what their religion is. And many times that switches and goes back and forth because so easily influenced. You remember how you weren't a bad kid, it was your friends that were bad. You don't hang around with that bad crowd. That's what my parents would tell me. Well, the reason they didn't want me to hang out with the so-called bad crowd, which I did anyway, is because the influence. My kids, as I was raising them, they wouldn't listen to me, but their friend was the smartest guy in the world. He knew what was going on. And that's what you're encountering over here, or anywhere for that matter, if you're with someone that's 19, 20, 21. I cut it off at 30 because I think even after someone has hit 25 and their brain is supposedly fully functioning, and to put an exclamation point on that number, insurance companies, when you go from the age of 24 to the age of 25 back home in America, will cut your insurance damn near in half. I saw that happen in my own life because the insurance companies know everything. They have actuaries. They have people that do nothing but look at numbers and statistics. And after you hit 25, your decision-making process becomes much clearer, much more focused, and much more based on logic than emotion. But still, we're talking about an emotional topic. We're not taking a decision as to what apartment to rent. We're looking at somebody that we may commit our life to. And so, that's apples and oranges. I like to give that other 5-year buffer for that 25-year-old, such as myself or a female, to sort of season and gain a little bit more wisdom, stumble a few more times, have a few more failures, learn by failing. And then by the time 30 comes around, you're much more relaxed and comfortable in your own skin. I know I was. I know that women are. When I met my wife, she was 32 years old and I was 62 years old. I think there is a light years of difference that if she being 32, she had been 22. I asked her, what were you interested in when you were 22? And it was, the usual suspects. Oh, I liked fashion, and I liked, how to TikTok, and I like to know how to do this and do that. And I said, are you a lot different now at 32? It was when I first met her than you were at 22. And she communicated to me that she was like a different person. She says, yeah, I just want, harmony. I just want peace. I just want stability. Back then, it was a thrill a minute. It was always go, go, go. We got to find something to do. I'm observing that right now, unfortunately, with friends that are very near and dear to me. I know of one person in particular, I mean to say, who did do that. He got married to someone when she was 19, and they had a kid together, and she's left him. And she just told him, as she grew older, she said, you know what, this ain't for me. Um, I'm not in love with you anymore. And why? Because she grew up and she started to realize what she really wanted out of life. When he wanted to take a nap, she wanted to go out dancing, or she wanted to go out with her friends. That is just, there's nothing wrong with that. The fact that she came out and told him, look, I no longer feel this way for you, I think it's commendable. She was telling him up front, hey, this isn't working anymore. We need to call it quits. Hasta la taco, and we'll share custody of the kids. And so that is exactly what's happening. Now, before everybody jumps on me, because I'm being unfair here, I know for a fact that there are exceptions to this rule. I know for a fact, and I've met them, people who, when he was 60, she was 20. And 20 years later, he's 80, he's damn near on his deathbed. She's 40, and she's still taking care of him and is loyal as the world to him because she sincerely loves him. There is I think, outside chance that if a 20-year-old hooks up with a 60-year-old, if she's kind of what I call an old soul or has kind of like some inside wisdom that's a little more acute than the normal 20-year-old and looks at the world through a little more less rose-tinted glasses, she'll look past the age and be able to see him for being kind, being nice to others, gentle, never raising a hand to her, never fooling around on her, never raising his voice, showering her with affection. And pretty soon, this outer shell that's no longer that attractive or never was to begin with, that takes second chair to the benefits that this man is bringing into her life. And they are still together. Unfortunately, I found that that is less than more when it comes to the success stories. When a woman is hit 30 years old and a man is hit 30 years old, their goals in life are pretty much defined. They've made some big mistakes and they've had a few successes. They know who they are as a person, and they, number one, I think they have their priorities organized. So when this 30 some odd year woman comes along into a 60 some odd year old man's life, she is much more logical in her thinking. She's no longer trying to meet, the number one dancer or the greatest looking guy or the coolest guy or the guy with the nicest car. She's just looking for what I mentioned before: someone who's kind, someone who's gentle, someone who respects her, shows her respects, and is able to provide for her, not only financially, but emotionally. And I think she is much more geared towards that and their higher success rate. So when I met women, I'll backtrack a little. When I was over here, I came at the age of 62 and I stayed single until I was 64, full 2 years. I enjoyed being by myself. I did date occasionally. Um, boy, the women that I met were just so beautiful and so vivacious and so outgoing and so bubbly. They made me feel young and they made me feel desirable and all that kind of stuff. It's like the cheerleader I was never able to date back in high school was finally sitting across from me. And yet, after spending 3 or 4 hours with her, I said, this is not going to work. I mean, what we're talking about, she can't get to my level of thinking, and I'm not going to lower mine down to hers. She's just too young. She didn't do anything wrong. I'm guilty of being too old. She's guilty of being too young. And there's just so many different dynamics at work here that eventually I could tell it was going to implode. It was always my choice just to end it right there on a friendly note. I'm still friends with a number of those women. I don't see them anymore because I'm married. My wife would never tolerate that. But we haven't ghosted or blocked one another on Facebook. We don't communicate anymore. But I have bumped into them here and there. And they've said, hey, Paul. And I've said, hey, what's your name? And that's been that. And there is no malice, there's no ill will. And we just both took it for what it was and moved on with our lives. So, the age difference out here, I strongly feel that for anybody coming out here, and I'm not one to give advice, this is just me recalling incidences and sharing observations and experiences in my own world. I think you should do whatever the hell you want to do. If you're a 65-year-old guy, you've got your mind pinpointed on some 22-year-old that you're talking to online, more power to you. I wish you luck. Personally, I think you're going to need it. And that's just me not being, I don't think, cruel. I think it's me just being honest and truthful with you. I really think the level of success when a woman is under the age of 30, I'll say it again. I was going to say 25, but I still think after the brain fully develops, that brain needs to get some exercise in the real world for about 5 years. Now, can you meet somebody 28 and 29 and get the same results? Of course. It's not some die-hard number that I'm sticking with. I'm using it more as a guideline. When someone, think of yourself. What did you think when you were 20 years old? And how did you think and feel when you were 30 years old? Were your beliefs the same? Were your core inspirations the same? Were your goals the same? Was your religious outlook the same? I can speak for myself and say no, light years apart between being the age of 20 and being the age of 30. When I was in my 20s and I was driving, I wanted to see how fast I could go. Nothing thrilled me more than driving my car and trying to break 100 miles an hour. By the time I was 30, the thought of going 100 miles an hour scared the shit out of me. I had enough life experience to know what can happen when you're in a fast moving vehicle and you don't have time to stop. Same thing with a relationship. When you get into a fast moving relationship and you don't have time to stop, you can have an emotional crash. You can have a financial crash. And much worse, you could possibly damage somebody without intending to do so, but pull it off anyway. Not only yourself, but the female involved also. There's nothing worse than building up false hope. So I really admire guys that when they meet somebody and they feel there just isn't a connection, and I feel the same way about women, when they feel that there isn't a connection there, they just let that be known gently and politely right up front. Saves all the brain damage later and false hope and expectations. Nothing worse than building somebody up just to watch them crash and burn later, when you can avoid that entirely. So, if you're coming out here and you're looking to meet that cheerleader that would never go out with you in high school, and you want to have that midlife crisis with the internet, rock on. Have a great time, but hopefully, as they say on the alcohol bottles, drink responsibly. I would suggest that you date responsibly. Okay, I'll see you next time whenever we do another video.